See everyone, and yes, welcome to all those I've not said hello to. So, for the people in the room, we've been joined by, let's see, so I think I told you up to Kristen, then we've got Dot and Mike and Kim and Mo, Jerry and Anna, Helen, Prakashidi, Maggie, John and Lan, Shredabar, and someone called Connecting to Audio. Oh, that's Shredabar as well. We've got two versions of Shredabar. Wow. What's better than one Shredabar? There's got to be two. Bethany, hello. Anyway, lovely. So as you all know, I think we are exploring the world of the mythic realm, entering the mythic realm. And for the last few weeks, we've been particularly entering a specifically Buddhist mythical realm, which is the realm of the five jhanas, the five Buddha mandala. So these are like Buddhist images of awakening. You could say they're imaginative doorways into the mind of awakening, because we can talk conceptually about awakening, but in a way it may not be that moving. So the point of the five jhanas is to try and give quite a complete and emotionally rich set of images to evoke the qualities of the awakened mind. So we started off with Akshobhya when Vajrapriya came via Zoom to talk to us about the blue Buddha of the East, Akshobhya. And then Saravantu evoked the sunny golden Buddha of the South, Ratnasambhava. And last week we had Amitabha evoked by Vidyaraja, the red, warm, passionate Buddha of the West. And this evening it's my pleasure to introduce you to Amoghasiddhi, the green Buddha of the North, the dark green colour of pine forests. And this, for me, is quite appropriate, really, because Amoghasiddhi is, if you like, the Buddha of action. And a few weeks ago, I finished a phase of being on retreat, and doing lots and lots of back-to-back retreating. And I entered the world of action myself. Any of my friends here will know that I've got one topic of conversation at the moment, which is converting my basement. So I undertook this crazy task of digging out my basement and waterproofing it, and it's just this huge job which has taken over my life. So I've entered the realm of action myself. Amoghasiddhi was probably, I think he might have been my earliest connection, so to speak, with the Buddha figures. He hasn't been very strong over the years. He was like one of these early, slightly naive connections I made, because he's a Buddha of action and I consider myself a person of action, so therefore he must be my guy. And then, yes, things evolved, and I think he hasn't been quite so strong. But anyway, I'm definitely in his realm at the moment. So his name means unobstructed success, Amoghasiddhi, or infallible success. It sounds great, doesn't it? So he's connected with the ability to overcome obstacles and achieve. And so he's the head of the so-called karma family, the action family. So it's like each of these Buddha figures can be said to be the head of a particular family. So Akshobhya is the head of the Vajra family. Here we go, got a Vajra here. And Ratnasambhava is the head of the jewel family. Amitabha is the head of the lotus family, and Amoghasiddhi is the head of the karma family. Vajrapriya, who we'll look at next week, is head of the Tathagata or Buddha family. And the karma family, so it's like these families, they're almost like a kind of Buddhist psychological profile, if you like, a bit like Myers-Briggs. You can kind of look at these different families and see sort of where do I fit in? Which family or families do I belong to? And you can tell if you're leaning towards the karma family, if you're quite defined by what you do. So I can relate to this. I feel quite defined by what I do, by my actions. So I'll start off talking about karma and the way that Amoghasiddhi relates to karma, to action. Karma just means action. So yes, karma family people tend to be over-identified with their actions. I'm going to read to you a little bit from Shunryu Suzuki's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. There's a couple of quotes in here which I find very interesting and which have affected me over the years. Suzuki writes in this way that you can't really pin down, which I quite like. So he's talking about traces. If you leave a trace of your thinking on your activity, you will be attached to the trace. For instance, you may say, "This is what I have done," but actually, it is not so. In your recollection, you may say, "I did such and such a thing in this certain way," but actually, that is never exactly what happened. When you think in this way, you limit the actual experience of what you have done. So if you attach to the idea of what you have done, you are involved in selfish ideas. What we call attachment is just these traces of our thought and activity. So I can certainly relate to this, the idea of leaving traces on my action. It's like when I'm down there in the cellar digging out 7 tons of earth, which is what I did a couple of weeks ago. There's a part of me thinking, I'm digging out all this earth. It's me, it's little old me, that's shifting 7 tons of earth into a skip. Can you believe that? It's like part of me couldn't quite get my head around owning this action. And it's not quite like that. It's not quite like that. The whole project that I'm engaging in is not quite like that. There are so many other people involved in this process. So, for example, there's people who came and helped me, for starters. There's Vajrapriya, who invented this marvelous way of digging a hole in water. We were basically digging out a well in my basement. We hit the water table. And how do you dig a well? Well, obviously use a colander. This was her invention. And Bayanara came and gave me a hand, and Bethany came and gave me a hand, and who else? Alan came and gave me a hand. So it's like, as soon as I start thinking, this is me doing this thing, I'm limiting it. But then I was also watching all these YouTube videos, and I got a couple of people to come around and give me advice. It's like, it's not just me. What's actually happening is something much bigger than little old me. So yes, one way that we can leave a trace on our action is by this self-referential thinking, sort of owning, appropriating action through thought. And so this could be thought like, this isn't my mess to clear up, but I suppose I'll do it anyway. Or it could be thought like, ooh, I hope they'll notice how good this is when they come and have a look. Or any kinds of thinking that's actually overlaying on top of the simple experience of shovel in ground, muck in bucket in skip. I mean, it's very simple, really. And when I could stay with the physicality of the simplicity, that was a very different kind of experience. So I'll just read on a little bit with Suzuki here. He says, in order not to leave any traces, when you do something, you should do it with your whole body and mind. You should be concentrated on what you do. You should do it completely, like a good bonfire. You should not be a smoky fire. You should burn yourself completely. If you do not burn yourself completely, a trace of yourself will be left in what you do. You will have something remaining which is not completely burned out. Zen activity is activity which is completely burned out, with nothing remaining but ashes. This is the goal of our practice. So that idea of burning yourself out completely, of being a good clean fire, not a smoky fire. I remember a solitary on which this was quite live for me. And the way I was interpreting it on the solitary was completing my cycles. Sometimes people talk in terms of completing cycles, not leaving things half done. So if I had a cup of tea, I'd try and drink the tea with full body and mind, as he's talking about, completely present. And then when I was finished, I didn't just leave the mug somewhere. I'd take the mug to the sink and I'd wash up the mug and leave it to dry, which may not sound much, but for me, I can tell you it is. Completing cycles is not one of my strong points. And doing all this work, it's very interesting to see how tempting it is just to leave my tools strewn everywhere and not clean up behind myself. So part of completing cycles, part of burning myself up is to some extent or another trying to leave the common areas tidy and swept and not be a smoky fire. And again, just digging and carrying is a very good exercise for being fully present, for being a clean fire, not a smoky fire. In fact, I was very happy for that period. It's gotten a bit more complicated since then, but I was just working physically hard, and then I was having a shower and doing some yoga and having some food, and that was my day. Very simple. So this full-hearted, wholehearted, full-bodied, fully present action is integral action, whole action, I think. This is what Sangha was talking about in the Eightfold Path, integral action, perfect action. So this is maybe just a taste of what a clean fire can be like from the point of view of Amoghasiddhi's activity. And of course, Amoghasiddhi's activity is activity which is spontaneous because he doesn't have to act. I think for a lot of us, action is compulsive. It certainly is for me. I compulsively feel like I need to be doing things. But for Amoghasiddhi, is completely content not to act and is therefore completely free to act where it is part of what's needed in the situation. So it's spontaneous, compassionate activity. So I want to move on from action to the poison that Amoghasiddhi is associated with, which is envy and jealousy. But before I do that, I think I want to just take a bit of a broader step back, because you might be a little bit curious how it is that Buddhas are associated with poisons. And I think it's worth just saying something very briefly about what's called the principle of correspondences. This is a Vajrayana idea, which is that everything mundane has a reflection or has an equivalent transcendental aspect to it. And this is possible because basically everything is non-dual. There is no ultimate duality between mundane and transcendental. And this is represented in the Vajra itself. So the Vajra has this central spherical bit, and then it's got two ends. So the central spherical bit represents that non-duality, which gets bifurcated through delusion. So then we have a mundane end and a transcendental end. And this Vajra actually has, this has seven spokes. A lot of them have 5 spokes. And the idea is that each mundane quality has a transcendental quality. So, for example, there's a mundane quality of envy, which Amoghasiddhi represents, which is transmuted into the infallible success, the wisdom of the infallible success, which is Amoghasiddhi's wisdom. Just mute our phone. So how does this work? So each Buddha family has a particular wisdom associated with it, which we could imagine as being sort of inherent to us. It's like if we're a member of the Karma family, then we have an affinity with the wisdom of infallible success. But then that gets distorted by ego clinging. So we start appropriating this activity. We appropriate the wisdom that knows how to act. We think, hey, I did that. I dug that hole. And when we get focused on activity, when we get focused on accomplishment, then we start looking around at other people and seeing how we're doing compared to them. Ooh, they're doing better than me. They're more successful than me. And so that's how it gets transmuted through delusion into envy. So envy comes about when we are identified with action, with success. And for this reason, Amoghasiddhi is also associated with the Asra realm. Each of the Buddha figures is associated with one of the realms as well. So he's the Asras, the jealous gods. They worship success. These are the politicians and the high-flying business people and the like. They really worship and respect success. So they've got a special affinity with Amoghasiddhi. He can tell them what's what. So Amoghasiddhi's all-accomplishing wisdom knows how to get things done. I'll give you a little quote here. This is from Reginald Ray, Secret of the Vajra World. This one here. So the wisdom of the Karma family is all-accomplishing wisdom. It manifests in people as a heightened awareness of the momentum and unfolding of events to the naturally ripening potential of situations. It always sees the next step implicit in every occurrence and knows how to bring everything towards its natural completion. This wisdom knows the winds of karma, where they are heading, and what their fruition is. It is the tremendous intelligence of knowing how to accomplish things. It is egoless efficiency and effectiveness. It is sensitive to the unfolding of situations, can see around corners, and is always prepared to lend a hand in the most intelligent and selfless way. So I love this description of the wisdom of the all-accomplishing wisdom. It's like it understands conditionality. It understands how conditionality works, and therefore it understands how to affect conditions in a way that lead to the best unfolding. Sort of, I've got this image of diamonds. If you're trying to cut a diamond, you have to find the right plane, the sort of the plane of weakness. And if you cut there, then the diamond will cleave apart. So it's like understanding these cleavage planes. I think of them in reality. You're not trying to cut straight through something. You're not trying to cut against the grain of the diamond. You understand which way to cut. I think there's something of the magician archetype in this. Amoghasiddhi is quite a magical kind of figure. And a few weeks back, I gave a talk about the myth of the magician. So magicians can see deeper than most people. Because they can see deeper, they can bring things about that to others look magical. And yes, Amoghasiddhi is quite a mysterious figure. He is he's supported by these strange bird men that clash these great big symbols called shang birds, and they draw him through the air on this on his throne. It's unfortunately a little bit not too dissimilar to Santa Claus being pulled by his reindeer, but put that image out of your mind. He also wears a crimson robes, as it happens. He's dark green, but he wears crimson robes. So there's something slightly mysterious and magical about him. Okay, I shall move on to another set of associations with Amoghasiddhi. And this is the area of fearlessness. So, Amoghasiddhi has this mudra. We've actually got an image on the shrine there, but you probably can't see it clearly enough online. So he has the Abhaya mudra, the fearlessness mudra. He's associated with fearlessness. And Vajrapriya mentioned for Akshobhya, the earth-touching mudra was associated with a particular story from the Buddha's life. And I think I'm not sure about if the Abhaya mudra has a particular story from the Buddha's life, but I'm thinking particularly of the story where Devadatta lets an elephant loose on the Buddha, tries to get this elephant to trample the Buddha to death. And the Buddha just stood firm. He just stood firm, and he showered this elephant with metta. He just love bombed this elephant who charged and slowly came to a halt and gave the Buddha a little nuzzle. So there's something about this quality of fearlessness. He did the same thing with Angulimala, if you know the story of Angulimala. So Amoghasiddhi communicates fearlessness. He's green. He's this pacifying green, the green of forests. We can imagine forest bathing, how that affects our nerves, our souls. It soothes us. It's calming. But probably for most of us, we can't aspire to fearlessness. That's more of an awakened quality. But we can evoke the image of Amoghasiddhi to give us courage. We feel fear, but if we are able to not be swayed by the fear, then we can experience courage. And I have to say that part of my craziness in taking on this basement project was because it terrified me. And I realized that I'd not been... I sort of leaned into little bits of fear from time to time. But there's something about this particular project which I thought would stretch my comfort zone. I've been within the comfort zone for a little while. There's probably more wholesome ways of stretching the comfort zone. There's certainly cheaper ways of doing it, but anyway, this is the one I chose. And yeah, I've been dwelling with quite a bit of fear and anxiety. You know, is the house going to fall down? Or when these two 38-ton trucks turn up with concrete, is it going to be ready for them to pour it? And, you know, this kind of thing. There's been all these, yeah, a few days of quite strong anxiety. And of course, fear can limit us in so many ways in our life. It can limit our life choices, you know, where we do and who we shack up with or don't shack up with. It can affect our communication, or it can just hang over us like a sort of black fog of anxiety and fear, and sort of lead to this sort of inhibiting, cramping effect on our life, limiting our psychological freedom. So if we can evoke Amoghasiddhi, then maybe we can feel the fear and do it anyway, assuming it's a good thing to do. I think even in mundane ways, challenging ourselves in mundane ways, you know, like my little DIY project, it can give us a flavour of courage. It can give us a flavour of liberation, which can be translated into our spiritual life. It's something quite tangible, isn't it? We can, you know, feel the fear very viscerally. And if we can experience going through that, if we can gain the confidence that we can go through that, then that can lead to just a little taste of freedom that can sort of come through in different ways. Okay, I think that's all I want to say about fear and courage. I'll just say a very small bit about his emblem, which is a double Vajra. Let me get the double Vajra. So this is a very strong symbol. If a Vajra is a strong symbol, a double Vajra is a kind of strong symbol squared. So a single Vajra is a symbol of integration. You've got the two, you've got this duality integrated. And so a double Vajra is like that. But more so, if you like, we've got two integrated Vajras. It's a very rich symbol. There's lots that could be said about it. It's said that it's a double Vajra is the basis of the universe. The universe rests on one of these. So maybe with these new telescopes coming out, they'll find it. It must be out there somewhere. But of course, Buddhism doesn't separate the external universe from the internal universe. So it's also a symbol for the basis of consciousness, or our deepest consciousness. So if we can come to a place where we can imagine the universe based on the double Vajra, on our deepest subconscious based on the double Vajra, and those two being the same, and that's the kind of wisdom that Amoghasiddhi represents, if you like. Complete integration of all opposites, complete stability. It's a very stable kind of image. It's also a mandala in itself, of course. So it's a sort of mandala within a mandala. And one can meditate just on this symbol, like meditating on the five Buddha mandala itself. And that has a integrating effect. So lots that could be said about the double Vajra. If you want to read more, I recommend Meeting the Buddhas, or that's right. This what's the modern version called? The Guides to the Buddhas, or something like that. This is an old copy by Vajrapriya. So we've got Amoghasiddhi, dark green, He's associated with night. So he lives in the night sky. This is where his chariot is being drawn through the night sky by these shang birds. He's associated with the element air or wind, very energetic image. Wind is the, again, external, interior. It's a symbol of energy, our internal bodily energies, prana or chi, if you like. And he can seem a bit mysterious. And I think it's also worth knowing that his consort is green Tara. So if we find Amoghasiddhi a bit inaccessible, green Tara is the complete opposite. She's very accessible, very quick to respond to us, very understanding. So that's all I'd like to say about Amoghasiddhi. I'd like to leave you with some questions to discuss in groups. Of course, as usual, you can discuss whatever you like, but I thought maybe a few areas you might want to consider are, where in your life do you feel some degree of courage, areas where you experience fear and you lean into that? And where do you feel that you could be doing more of that? Where do you feel a bit inhibited by your fears? Can you think of areas where you feel that there's more to go, that you'd like to lean a bit further? So that's probably enough. But you might also want to consider, how do you experience yourself smoking? So I'm talking in terms of activity. When does your bonfire smoke? So in terms of activity, where do you feel a bit identified with your actions, or how do you experience yourself identifying with your actions? This may or may not make sense to you, but yes, as I was saying for myself, I experience it as the way that I sort of narrate. I kind of narrate my experiences. I'm saying, okay, now I'm going to measure up this distance, and then I'll dig out another load, and blah de blah de blah. And it's like sometimes the mind is still, and sometimes I'm just giving myself an ongoing narrative. I think that's one way that I smoke, that I'm a smoky bonfire. And as I was saying, another way I'm a smoky bonfire is by not finishing cycles. But yeah, maybe you can relate to that question, maybe you can't. It's sort of how clean and unidentified is your action. So I shall ask Akash Raja to give us the Zoom magic and 20 minutes in groups, and see you on the other side.